A.W. Tozer once said, "What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us." Why would he say that? What exactly is he getting at when he says what you think to be true about God is the most important thing about you? I think it's this. What we functionally believe to be true about God will determine how we respond to and interpret reality as we experience it. For instance, when something bad happens, do we believe that a sovereign God is in control of everything? That he holds everything together by the word of his power? Or did God get thwarted again? When something like a tsunami happens and wipes out 10,000 people at once, is it because God couldn't stop it? Or is it because God could stop it but wasn't good? Is God haphazard in how he relates to his creation? What we believe to be true about God matters. Do you see why that matters? What it does is it provides a grid for us on how to interpret life, a framework, as it were, to deal with things like cancer and car accidents and graduations, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what exactly do we believe about God? Our statement of faith says this: we believe in one God, creator of all things, holy, infinitely perfect, and eternally existing in a loving unity of three equally divine persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Having limitless knowledge and sovereign power, God has graciously purposed from eternity to redeem a people for himself and to make all things new for his own glory. And so what we believe is that there is one God, not multiple gods like polytheism. We don't believe that everything is God like pantheism, but that there is one God. It is a monotheistic religion. That this God is the creator of all things, that we exist because God planned and created us to exist. And as he's our creator, it means that he is our owner, that we owe him our allegiance, that he has all the rights of ownership and privilege over us. We believe that he is holy, meaning that he is morally perfect in every way, that he has never sinned, nor can he sin. He is perfect. Nothing that we can add to God, nothing that we could take away and somehow improve him. He is not changing and getting better and better all the time, but is perfection personified. He always has been and always will be perfect, holy creator. What is good is good because it is derivative of him. He is good. He creates the standard. In fact, he is the standard of what is good. When we say that he has limitless knowledge, we mean that God knows everything, not only what is, but what could be, and that he always chooses the best possible outcome that comes to play. We say that he is sovereign, meaning he alone rules over human history. For any king or queen or politician to set themselves up above a sovereign God is not only ridiculous and wicked, but it's futile. It's laughable to think that a mere human, that a mere creature can somehow thwart God's plan or make him do their bidding. So in light of this, God planned from before all creation itself to redeem a people for himself and to make all things new for his own glory. What this tells us is that the world and what is taking place is not God's plan B or C or D or even Z, but what's happening right now in human history is the outflow of God's plan A. That we exist for his glory, and as we live, we are in many ways living out the story that he has written that is beautiful and brings him glory. See, the most foundational question that we have to answer about life is this: does God exist for me, or do I exist for God? Does God exist to make me happy and to serve me and to meet my needs, or do I exist for his pleasure and his glory? Now, that might sound like a simple delineation, but it's amazing how so many of us view that foundational question wrongly. And if we view that foundational question wrongly, we're going to have a gospel where we're at the center of it, not God, where we think that God exists to do our bidding rather than we exist for Him and His glory. See, even some Christians relate to God as if His only reason for being is to wait on them hand and foot. This is not only sinful and shallow, but it's actually really unfulfilling for us as human beings because we were created for something so much more. We were created to delight in something so much more satisfying than ourselves. When we say that God is Trinity, what do we mean? When we say that God exists as Father and Son and Holy Spirit, three equally divine persons, what in the world are we talking about? What we mean is that God is Trinity. God is tri-unity, one God, but existing in three individual persons, each person being fully God, and yet each distinct and relating to each other in a unique way. Now, this is both beyond our comprehension and something that we can somewhat understand. Now, Christians often wrestle with and struggle with not being able to fully understand and comprehend the Trinity, but I think that's misguided in a sense of why would we want to know a God or to worship a God that we can fully and completely understand? I mean, we don't even know or comprehend so much of what He has made. What makes us think that we can understand Him? We are coming up with new discoveries all the time, learning about what He has made and how cells function, and the intricacy and the complexity of the basic unit of life, of which our bodies have trillions of them, or the sheer size and volume of the universe, which we exist like a speck. It should not surprise us then that we don't fully understand God, but rather than fully understanding Him, what we're left to do is either to reject Him or to worship Him and stand in awe of Him. So the God in whose image we were made reveals Himself to us as a Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, that they're all present at the moment of creation, and that the Father designs, the Son creates in the power or buffered up by the Spirit. They are all present at Jesus' baptism as the Father speaks His words of affirmation over Jesus. This is my Son, whom I love, with Him I am well pleased. As the Spirit is visibly manifested in a dove that comes and rests on and empowers the Son. Now, the thing about the Trinity is that they are constantly seeking the glory and the honor and the praise of the other. There's a hierarchy of roles within the nature of the Godhead, and yet an equality and a deference that is absolutely beautiful. Now, understanding this helps us to understand things like marriage relationships and human relationships, how there can be differing roles, there can be a sense of hierarchy and submission and leadership, while at the same time maintaining equality. Where there can be differences of what one is called to do versus the other is called to do, and yet a complete equality, because none of us would say that somehow Jesus the Son is less important or less of a big deal than the Father because He submits to Him. Or that the Spirit is somehow less God because He is sent by the Father and sent by the Son. No, there's an interplay that exists between the Father, Son, and the Spirit that is beautiful to behold and instructs us a lot about who we are as individuals and how we're to relate to people in relationship. See, God is an individual within the context of community. He is an individual within Father, Son, Holy Spirit, a unity of essence, so to speak, but then also a diversity of roles and persons. And so when God creates us in His image, He is creating us distinctly as individuals, and yet we do not flourish and thrive simply as individuals, but are made to be in the context of community. The Bible holds these things in tensions where traditional cultures tend to elevate the communal nature or the communal identity over and above the individual, sometimes to the suppression of the individual. The Bible doesn't do that. Whereas Western cultures tend to highlight and elevate individuals and to the exclusion or the benefit of the broader community, the Bible doesn't do that, but holds these in tension that we are individuals in the context of community. The Trinity also helps us to understand how God is both a relational being, but not a needy being. This is an important distinction to make because God did not create the world and He did not create us because He was lonely. He didn't create us because He needed someone to love or needed someone to love Him. All of His needs were actually fully met within Himself in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I think this is important because so often we portray God as like this needy high school boy who just wants a prom date and just wants someone to love him. And that's not God at all. God is fully met within Himself. Therefore, He creates out of the overflow of who He is. And the way that He relates to us is completely and totally based on grace. See, this blows us away even more to the lavishness of God's kindness and His grace toward us in Jesus Christ. And when we realize this, it leads us to worship. It reminds us we exist for His glory, and we are redeemed by His sheer, merciful, unbelievable, amazing grace.